Oh, hello. Hey guys, Jessica Magoch here, CEO of JPM Sales Partners, going live for our Monday morning motivator meeting. We meet here every Monday at 10 a.m., rain or shine, sleet or hail, and we're going to bring in your Monday morning sales meeting. I do my Monday morning meetings public, so everyone can participate, whether you're in one of my coaching programs or not. It's required if you're in one of my programs. So I see you guys logging in there. I'm actually going to share this into our group. Hey, be quiet there. I'm going to share this into our I'm going to share this into our Sales Launch Coders book. Now, if you're curious, or group, if you're curious about what the Sales Launch Coders is, it is our accelerator group from startup to conversion machine in 6 weeks. So we take people through step by step how to develop their sales strategies from scratch, or how to, in many cases, improve their sales strategies so that they can increase their closing ratios and thus make more sales. Hi, Anthony. Nice to see you. So what I've got for you today, we'll do our regular rundown Monday morning meeting. We're going to set intentions. We'll take some accountability, get some metrics. I'm going to share with you a marketing tip that's working for me right now in my digital marketing online business. And talk about, in our motivation minute, I'm going to talk about feminine leadership. And this isn't just for the females, so guys, don't tune out if you're thinking that this one's not for you, because it's for women, female leaders, or anyone who wants to be a female leader, as well as men who need to develop female leaders. I think it actually will also help with men who are leading women as well. Just to note some of the gender differences just from my perspective. I'm not saying this is like the last word to be had on it, but I was recently asked this question of, as you were building up your 9-figure sales team, can you tell me about your mentor? So, tell them about my mentors. And he said, and what are 2 things that you had to do differently from what your mentors taught you, or how did you have to adjust things? So one of those answers was the transition to leadership and how that was different from my observations of my male leaders, because all of my mentors were men. And this, again, is in the traditional corporate American corporate environment. And so how what kind of changes? So I'm going to leave you with some tips if you're female leader or are developing female leaders, some of the things that I learned that helped me make that transition and also helped me lead large sales teams successfully. Awesome. Okay, let's go. First thing you got to do is set your intentions and remember why the heck you're doing this thing in the first place, whether it's a business that you're building or a sales team that you're leading or something that you're selling. What is your big why? We've heard that term before, right? And a lot of people don't have an answer to this question. So I'd really challenge you today, not tomorrow, today, to think about if you don't know immediately what the answer to that question is, of what my big why is, I challenge you to figure that out and write it down. Cool? Because that's the thing that's going to motivate you through the hard times. So let's just get that intention set beginning of the week. I know what mine is. It makes me smile. What's yours? Cool. So now accountability. Accountability is going to help us understand how close we are to achieving that big why and keep us accountable to making sure that we're doing the things to stay on track to get to where we want to be, right? Accountability, huge, since we're talking about leadership today, huge part of leadership, right? There's leadership to me has like two ends of the spectrum. On one end, you have leadership and motivation and motivating inspiring people to do better, to dream better, bigger, to do more, to push themselves, right? And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have accountability and metrics and numbers, right? Keeping people to their promises. Because if you just do this side of it and are, motivating people and leading people, but then you have no way to keep them accountable to what they need to do to get there, then just kind of falls apart, right? And that's usually what happens when you have like motivational speakers and things like that come in and you get all jazzed up, right? And then they leave. And then there's no one there to keep you accountable for what you said you would do, right? So if you're working, solo, independent, find an accountability partner, someone that you can check in with and say like, this is what I said I was going to do this week, and this is what I did this week, right? And in sales, we focus on what is the activity and conversion rates from one stage of the sales cycle to the next. How many outbound marketing activities did you do? How many of those converted into leads? How many of those leads turned into discovery calls? How many discovery calls turned into presentations? How many presentations turned into sales? And how many referrals were garnered off of that? Cool. So again, you have leadership has on one side motivation, inspiration, encouragement, pushing people beyond their limiting beliefs of what they believe is possible for them. The other side, you have keeping them accountable. Okay. So often when I audit sales teams, even in very large, big name companies, that this accountability side is really lacking, right? There's what they think they're keeping people accountable, but really they're having like a computer keep them accountable, right? Like entering things into a CRM or a Salesforce is not keeping people accountable, okay? Running a report off of Salesforce is not keeping people accountable. Those are numbers that can help you keep people accountable. But in and of itself, just putting something into the CRM is not keeping people accountable, okay? So note that if you're a leader, you've got to have both ends of the spectrum, and then you got to be able to call out people when they don't meet those accountability standards that they agreed to get to where they wanted to be. Cool? And all that has to do with trust. So we'll jump into that when we get more into the leadership portion of today's talk on feminine leadership. So my marketing tip for today, though, goes back to, I know you've heard it before, but I do believe it's true and it works for me and it's working for me right now, is growing an email list. People seem to think this is like an outdated thing and people don't check their emails anymore and people don't want to give their emails anymore. And in fact, when someone gives you their email address, they really want your help. They're really interested in what you have to say. So you may be getting less emails than you did 10 years ago when, people's inboxes weren't flooded, but the people who do give you their email addresses really want what you have to offer or to say, right? So that actually makes your list even more valuable than it was before, because those people are more discerning now than ever. So though it may be a smaller list, it's a more qualified list. It's a hotter list, right? A list of warm prospects. So, and then also I was listening to a talk with Gary Vee, and he was speaking to franchisee owners of all different franchises, but the marketing and advertising departments of those franchise companies. And they're talking about Facebook advertising and how they would run a couple ads on Facebook and they say, oh, this doesn't work for me. And he's saying it's because you're engaging a cold list right into buying something, right? And sometimes that works on really low cost products. But for larger sales, any kind of advertising campaigns always were about building brands and building relationships, right? So that's true when we jump from, paper ads to online ads. It's still all about building brands and nurturing relationships. So you get those people out of social media into your zone, which is your email list. You own your email list. You do not own your Facebook followers. You do not own your Instagram followers or YouTube or whatever else, but you do own your email list. Okay. So when you get those people to join onto your email list, one, they're highly qualified, and two, you can then market your products to a much warmer audience. Cool. And you'll have much more success, and you'll be much happier because you won't get so many no's all the time. So instead of asking people to buy something right off of an ad or a post, give them something free to get onto your list, right? Or send out a couple free videos and then ask them to join your list, and then market to that list. Cool? Okay, it's working for me right now with my one-on-one consults, which you will only know about if you're on my list. So get on my list. You can get on my list by going to freetraining.jpmpartners.com. Okay, cool. So today I wanted to talk to you about feminine leadership. And like I said, I was recently asked by someone in a podcast interview, tell me, I was telling him about my mentors, and I had, great leaders before me helping me build and motivate and inspire sales teams and keeping them accountable. And he said, well, tell me 2 things that you needed to change from what they told you to make you successful. I was like, that is a great question, because people assume that you always have to do everything step by step, which you should. You should. When you find someone who's doing what you want to do successfully, you do exactly what they tell you to do until you hit a wall, and then you know enough to know what you need to change to move forward. So this is what happened to me when I moved into leadership from a sales role in a typical corporate America environment where we were growing a company. And I, started moving up the ranks, and eventually got to VP level of sales. And I would just want to talk about some of the things that I noticed that I needed to change when I got to that level. That might help you guys if you're going through that as well. Ladies who are moving up the ranks in corporate America leadership environment, as well as men who are developing female leaders. Right? So you can get my perspective on that to help make some adjustments. This isn't a general talk about leadership, because I could talk forever about that. But I'm taking some of those general rules of leadership and applying them to what it is to be a female in a leadership role in a typically all-male environment, which most of corporate America is. I'm not necessarily addressing MLM type companies, multi-level marketing or network marketing companies. Not that I have anything against them, but they're just built differently, right? Like, you don't need to earn your leadership role. You start, hiring people right away. And you can have hundreds of people on your team and never have met them. So I'm talking about a little different kind of leadership where you're, in interviewing people and choosing the right people for your team, and then helping them develop and grow on an individual basis as well as group. So here's some things that I noticed. I'm a really good copycat, right? So being an acting major, I'm very used to stepping on the outside and looking in and making observations about people and behaviors, right? Inside and outside. And so the way I got to where I was at that level, at that time, earning multiple 6 figures already, was by copying the people who went before me. Not just copying, what they said in presentations, but how they dressed, how they acted, how they spoke, the tone of voice that they used, and things like that. When I moved into a leadership role, this tactic stopped working for me because all of my mentors and all of the people ahead of me were male. And in fact, many times when I looked outside of my company, it was very difficult at that time, which was 10 years ago, to find female leaders in that in this kind of role. And more so female leaders that I wanted to emulate, right? Um, I learned quickly that doing things exactly like my male counterparts got different reactions. Now, what I'm saying might be a little controversial, but again, I'll repeat, this is just observation. This is my personal experience. So, some things that I noticed were tone of voice. If I spoke in a way that replicated my male counterparts with, deep, dominant, stern voice, the reaction wasn't the same as when they would speak that way. Um, and I'm talking about in board meetings and in leadership meetings, having your voice heard by the people ahead of you and your colleagues, right? People in the same level, and getting your ideas across. Another thing I noticed was that my how much people the perception or what I said was much better received when I smiled. And my male counterparts didn't ever have to smile to get across what they wanted to say. So I had read a book, I was noticing this, and I was like, gosh, when I do the same things they do, people don't respond the same way. And so I read a book called How to Be a Boss Without Being a Bitch, because I was desperate to try to find ways to adjust in this environment. How do I be feminine and be a leader when all of my, my mentors were very masculine in nature, right? Do I have to wear a suit? Do I have to wear a pantsuit? Do I have to, look, change the way I look to be perceived as not as feminine so that I get people to respond to me? So those were some of the things that I was collecting, just observing, right? So one of them was once I started smiling, if I'd said the same things, once I started smiling, the reception was a lot better in what I had to say. So I'm smiling now. And you'll notice I smile a lot. And I think for guys, when I teach guys how to sell, I encourage them to smile too, because it just opens up, it opens you up to other people, right? This act of smiling, it actually reflects onto your customer smiles. So if your customer looks like this in a presentation, it's probably exactly what your face looks like. So the same in leadership, right? Like if I'm talking to a group of people and they're like this, that's probably what my face is doing at the time too. But if I want someone to smile, I just smile and they smile back. It's just human nature. So smiling is a huge one. That helped a lot. Also, when presenting ideas, women tend to do this more than men, as I've noticed. I'm not trying to make any enemies here. But saying things like when you're offering a new idea, right? They're asking for opinions at a round table and you're offering an idea. Don't start off the sentence with I think or maybe or in my opinion. Just blanket state the thing as if it were fact, right? Because women tend to cushion what they say in order to it must just be their past experience of being received better. But what happens is that when you cushion things with things like that, it just takes away from their perception of your belief in what you're about to say, right? Well, I think kind of maybe this could work versus the only way we can do it is this, right? And you're going to get people disagreeing with you, but no one's going to pay attention if you're wishy-washy about what you believe. You may be wrong, but you've got to be willing to go with being wrong as well. And in place of not being heard at all, right? So eliminating words like, I think, maybe, it might be a good idea if, right? What do you guys think about this idea? So the last one actually is an example of something that I would employ. Like if I if I was in a room of men, and there's some situations where you can't change people's prior perceptions, whether it be culturally or their past life experiences or what, where they're just not going to take you seriously, especially as a 25-year-old female. And so in that case, if I had a really strong opinion about something, I would pass it on to a male counterpart to promote for me. And I would make it sound like their idea if I presented something. Or I would lead people along a path. This also definitely helps with leadership of teams. When you want someone to see a concept, instead of telling them the idea, you ask them a bunch of questions that lead them to come up with the idea themselves. And now it's their idea and not your idea. And because it's their idea, it's right. And I laugh because you have to be willing to give up that egotistical part of you that wants the recognition for everything, right? Like you have to be willing to do things because it's the best thing for your people, because it's the best thing for the company, and be willing to give up recognition for that. Now, in a sales environment, that's cool because your commissions, right? You're paid on performance. So it doesn't matter who gets the credit. They're not going to get paid more. If it's something that's going to help everyone get paid more, then you do what you can to have other people come up with the idea on their own. You can use the same concept when you're trying to coach a salesperson. And instead of telling them what's wrong with their presentation, telling them what's wrong with their, activity for the week, guide them along a series of questions that get them to tell you what they think the answer is. Okay. That leads me to the second thing, which is trust. So one of the core things that I learned about leading people and leading teams is that you can't do any of it without having the trust of the people that you're leading. So, and when I say trust, it's not something you can fake. Like you can't ask me like how to tell you to make people think that they can trust you, right? If you don't have their best interest at heart, there's nothing that you can do to change that or fake that. So, trust to me is basically not saying that what they want is important, but really owning that as you lead a team, what you want is not as important as what they want. Okay. And what I mean is everybody on your team has specific goals. They have individual goals and lifestyle goals that they want to meet. Right. And this is why I say this is hard to translate to like an MLM environment where you're training thousands of people, but every single person has their own goals, personal goals, lifestyle goals, right? And if I put those goals at the forefront of my intentions of all the decisions that I make for the team, how I coach them, how I encourage them, the goals that I set for them, but the quotas that I set for them, if they're all based around helping the salesperson or the person you're leading achieve their goals, then I never have to worry about achieving my goals. This is not just feminine leadership. This is everybody leadership, right? So you put them first and you make all your decisions in the best interest of the salesperson, and then nobody else in the company has to worry. Because if all the salespeople are meeting their goals, their personal goals, their income goals, their lifestyle goals, then all the sales leaders are meeting their income goals as well, and the company's meeting their goals, and the clients are happy, and everyone's happy, and everyone's making money. But if the focus is ever anywhere else, on the company over the salesperson, on the sales leader over the salesperson, then things fall apart. So if you have your focus on helping the salespeople get to where they want, and you show that, you reflect that in your actions, you reflect that in your votes at the board meetings, You reflect that in and how you voice your opinion in leadership meetings with them in mind. Like you're there representing your team, you're not there representing you. Then they feel that, right? It's your actions speak louder than words. So your team knows that they can trust you. Your team knows that you have their best interest in mind. That means that you'll tell them when they need to know something important, if there's any kind of like changes coming down the pike that they need to know or don't need to know. They don't need to know everything. And sometimes knowing everything will hurt them getting to their goals. So you need to be able to decipher like how much of the inside company information do we disseminate all the way down the ranks, because if they know every single problem the company's having, well, how great are they going to be at, selling confidently to the customer? When in fact we know sales is going to solve all those problems. So having that balance of knowing what to share and what not to share. Not being friends, but being friendly, right? So that means taking them out for drinks, but not getting drunk, right? And definitely not being the last one there. Like take them out, chill out for a half hour, and then go on your way and let them have their bonding as a team. From a feminine leadership, I watched my male counterparts go out to drinks, go out to this was in New York, so like racetracks, even strip clubs. Yes, it happened, but we're doing things differently. So taking people out to get their nails done, right? I didn't take my male counterparts out, but some of them wanted to, so it was fun. But I would take out my leadership team was mostly women. So instead of taking them out to lunch, we might go get our nails done. And so we could bond in that way in a non-work environment. So just bringing things in differently. So if you're leading female teams, right, think about what are the bonuses and awards and things that are going to appeal to them and not just the guys, right? Like think about in your office, what do you have? Like I've in these like Google-esque environments, are they all geared to very masculine things like video games and pool tables and things like that? Or are you appealing to both, right? Because you need to have a balanced team in order to really in order to address your whole market. If you don't have 50% women on your team, please aim to do that, because women represent 50% of the population, and they also represent 50% of your target market. So you'll want to have all different kinds of all genders and cultures and ethnicities, everything on your team, so that you can address a market completely. So if they know they know that you care about them, they know that you trust, that they can trust you, then they'll follow your leadership, right? If they don't, if you're getting resistance to that, then they don't trust you. That's not their fault. That's your fault. Okay. Again, if you want to band-aid that or fix that, then you need to make sure that all your focus is on them achieving their personal goals. I talk to a lot of sales managers that do not know their people's personal goals. I'm not talking about income quota goals. I'm talking about lifestyle goals. What do they want to buy? Where do they want to live? Who do they want to be with? Right? What are some of their things on their bucket list? Those are all things that will help motivate them when things get hard to achieve what they want to achieve. Also, this is going a little deep. So 2 more things. One is clothing. So I found that I wasn't comfortable in a suit all the time, right? And they do make suits for women, but I didn't feel comfortable, and I didn't feel very feminine. So also a lot of the designers that I was coming across, they weren't making business clothing. They were making party clothes, right? So deep cut things and short things and things that are inappropriate for the office. So I was trying to find a way to model appropriate work dress. And I figured out that I could follow news anchors. If I followed news anchors, and usually they were the weather women, right? If I looked at what they were, whatever they were wearing was usually appropriate for a work environment. It was never a pantsuit. So I got some feedback off of watching those leaders on TV of what they would wear, and news anchors and things like that, and brought that into the office environment. So that's one tip for you too. If you're like, what do I wear now that I'm a VP of sales? Like, what do I wear? You can, you got to dress the part as you move along. That's one tip, is to go and look at what news anchors are wearing. And then another thing to note is that as whether you're male or female leader, people tend, this is a little Freudian, but people tend to immediately, as a leader, versus follower is probably not like the best word for it, but leader versus follower relationship, they're going to automatically look at you as the parent of that gender. So most leaders in corporate environment are men, and people tend to look at them as their father figures, right? And so whatever relationship they had, a lot of times that person's filling in the father figure that they never had or that they always wanted, right? When you have a great relationship. And same thing's true on the female side. They're actually projecting onto you the relationship that they have with their mother, just because you're in a leadership role, leading them. So good or bad, right? So sometimes they have great relationship with their mom and it's like a breeze. And sometimes they have a bad relationship with their mom and they have a really hard time trusting. So the only way I came about knowing this was the feedback that I got from some of my sales guys, that they would come in and they were self-aware enough, because we worked a lot on self-awareness and self-development and personal development in our sales meetings. And they say, you know what, like, I have issues with my mom and I know I'm projecting those onto you and I'm trying not to. And it's like, cool. Like, we acknowledge that. Thank you. But I'm not your mom. Like, everyone has their own issues and stories, and there were lots of them. And so I know that there's lots of them out there. But just acknowledging that could be part of the relationship that existed before you ever started working together helps when you're approaching that relationship. Cool. So sometimes if you get immediate resistance from someone, that could be an indication that there's something there's like some mom issues there. Again, all my observations, just wanting to share these things with you because they helped me. I had to figure these things out along the way to make some transitions into leadership. And so anyone else who's coming up the ranks as a female leader, I want to share that with you. So I talked about smiling, gaining trust, being friendly but not being friends, having them know that you care about them because you know what their personal goals are and you're putting them first, knowing that they're going to see you as a mother figure. They're going to project their relationship with their mom onto you. So that's okay. Just learn how to work with it. Knowing what to wear by looking out into news anchors. That worked for me great because I didn't feel like a girl in a guy's clothes, So a lot of feeling comfortable and confident has a lot to do with how you project yourself in front of a room and in front of a team. So making sure that you feel your best and you look your best just makes you project your best out into the world. Also, speaking in a grounded voice versus a very high voice, because this might actually work in sales when you're trying to sell something, because people think that you're naive and they maybe they won't actually trying to hurt them in any way. But it really doesn't work in leadership positions because people don't really take you seriously, right? So if you're one of those people that tends to talk in a high voice because you've been perceived or that's been received better for you in society, you need to start working on lowering your voice and grounding your voice, but not talking so deep that you become intimidating and fearful, right? Invoke fear in your followers. So finding that middle ground where you're grounded, right? In your voice is coming from your belly and not from your throat and not from your nose and not from your head either. Can you see how my disposition totally changed with just the pitch of my voice? Okay. I don't think that you would take me seriously if I spoke like that. Okay. Now, if I'm speaking to my children, this is a great example. If you're a mother and you have kids, this is easy to practice, because when they're little and we want them to be happy, we coo like this, right? But when we want them to take us seriously because it's time to go to bed now, it's 8:30 and no more, then we speak differently, right? So it's just a way that you already use your voice that way. So use it that way in your leadership role. So, there is one more thing I wanted to say about emotions, because this kind of gets me riled up. It's generally known, it's not okay to cry in business, right? Like, I've cried lots of times, but not usually in front of a room, and I'll go home and cry and get it out. But I think this is an interesting rule that we've made in corporate, because as much as it's not okay to cry, get emotional in the form of crying, somehow it is okay to get emotional in the form of anger. And I actually feel like neither is appropriate for the work environment, and I'll tell you why. So to me, someone who breaks down and cries because they're not getting what they want in a board meeting or something like that has the same effect as someone who loses their temper and gets angry because they're not getting what they want in a board meeting, right? But yet somehow we're accepting the anger side, and I see a lot on the male side of the table, especially. You get angry, you get real loud, you yell, you scream, right? But to me, both are letting your emotions get the best of you. And in business, you have to really take that emotion out so you can make a decision that is logical and that makes sense for you and your team, because emotions are all ego, right? So whether you're getting angry, whether you're getting sad, I'm not saying you shouldn't have emotions, because then you'd be a robot. I'm saying in business, when you let your emotions dictate your choices, I'm saying emotions, not your instinct or your intuition. Those are different than emotion. When you let your emotion guide your decisions, you're not then in the best place to make the best, decisions for you and your team, right? So whether that's freaking out and getting angry, or freaking out and breaking down, just wait till you get home to break down. But think about what part of this is decision-making process is emotion influencing, and what part is logic. Because if you've taken all my trainings, we're first emotional beings and second logical. So how do we take that emotion out so that we can make a logical decision that is in the best interest of all the goals that we have prior set, that we could properly look into the future and anticipate what might be coming down the pike, instead of worrying about right now because your ego's in life or death mode, right? I could talk more about that at a different meeting and emotions, but as it pertains to feminine leadership, I don't think it's appropriate to lose your temper or to break down and cry if you're trying to lead a team. You need to show strength and show it's not that you don't have emotions, it's that you have control of your emotions in order to lead properly. Okay? Because emotions actually are, when you do all your personal development work, emotions are actually just a product of what your beliefs are and how you perceive the situation. Okay? And that is different for everybody. So when you know that those are actually your choice deep down, because you get to choose your beliefs, which dictate your emotions when you get feedback that you like or don't like. Some things make you happy, some things make you sad or angry, but you get to choose what those responses are because you get to choose your beliefs. So that's kind of like digging deep into it. But someone who's not aware of that lets their emotions get the best of them, and then also makes decisions based on those emotions because they're not able to remove them and then make a decision that is clear-headed and the best thing for them and their team. Same things goes for like anxiety. Like if you're feeling anxious and you need to make a decision, ask yourself, just like you'd ask a client, if I wasn't feeling anxious, what would my decision be? Right? If I wasn't feeling angry right now, how would I make this decision? Cool. Okay, so I'm going to close out. That's my little tips on feminine leadership for the 21st century. And I'll see you guys, if you haven't already, grab my free training, The Science Behind Why People Really Buy, at freetraining.jpmpartners.com. And I'll see you there. Bye.